Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to this, the sixth in our series of Digital in Conversation webinars, and I'm delighted to welcome you today on behalf of the Hellenic Initiative Australia. My name's Nick Pappas, and I'm delighted to be welcoming today the Minister of the Interior of the Hellenic Republic, Niki Kerameus, who'll be joining us shortly. Minister Kerameus follows an impressive lineup of guests to this forum, which has included the Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the then Foreign Minister Nikos Dendias, and international actor, writer and noted Philhellene Stephen Fry. Among our viewers today across the Hellenic diaspora are the Australian Ambassador to Greece, Her Excellency Alison Duncan. I welcome her, and of course the Consul General of Greece to Sydney, Ioannis Malikourtis, who I'm also delighted to welcome. Before I welcome the Minister, a little bit about her. She was born in Thessaloniki. She's a lawyer by profession from an esteemed family of lawyers. She's fluent in Greek, English, and French. She holds master's degrees in law from Paris Panthéon-Assas University and Harvard, and she was first elected to the Greek Parliament in 2015. She rose quickly to the ministry, serving as Minister for Education and Religious Affairs between 2019 and 2023. And with the return of the Mitsotakis government, she was promoted to the Ministry of the Interior, a position she currently holds. Minister Kerameus, welcome to THI's Digital in Conversation series. It's a great privilege to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you very much for having me. It's a great privilege to be here today with you.
The pleasure is ours, Minister. I know that our viewers, not only in Australia, but across the diaspora, are looking forward to hearing your insights today about a range of matters we'll be covering. May we begin with a little bit about yourself? You're a lawyer by profession. How did the law prepare you for a career in the heady world of Greek politics?
Look, I think that the legal profession certainly gives you certain skills which can be very useful when you exercise in such positions. In terms of being in a position to understand legal ramifications, legal challenges, etc., regarding public administration documents. That's not to say, of course, that anybody who's not a lawyer cannot become a politician. But I think it does give you skills which are very useful in terms of navigating through the numerous challenges that we're faced with on a daily basis.
If I recall your background correctly, you were a litigator in private practice in both New York and Greece, with an emphasis on alternative dispute resolution, particularly arbitration, if I recall that correctly. Does modern politics in Greece lend itself to negotiation and compromise on policy? Does that typify the contemporary world of Greek politics?
Look, when you're a lawyer, and especially a litigator, you want to win. You want to win for your clients. When you're a politician, you want to improve people's lives, and the objective is to reach the broadest possible consensus. So in that respect, I must tell you that every single effort we undertake at the Ministry of the Interior, but not only, generally at the government, we do try to reach the largest possible consensus. The very first law that we passed during this term, which was in July, so 3 months ago, had to do with the lifting of all barriers regarding Greeks living abroad to vote during the elections. The reason why this hadn't been achieved was because the Constitution required a supermajority of 2/3, so 200 of 300 MPs had to vote in favor of such lifting of the requirements. I must say with pride for our political system that we achieved the majority of 208 MPs out of 300. So I think consensus is possible, particularly when we talk about such issues which touch upon, I would say, the cornerstone of democracy, the cornerstone of our political system. And anything having to do with such issues, we always, but in general, more broadly too, we always try to achieve the largest possible consensus.
Well, it's heartening to hear that policy negotiation is still a reality in the Greek political environment. That is good to hear. I was interested to read, Minister, that while working as a lawyer in New York, you won praise for your pro bono work for the homeless and the destitute. How important is the act of giving back for you?
Extremely important. I think it should be part of the way we live, just like you exercise on a regular basis. The same way, I think it has to become a lifestyle approach. Giving to others, giving back to society, and that's one of the reasons. And now I'm gonna, remember my previous term as Minister of Education, where we were adamant about introducing volunteering as a mandatory school course, starting at the age of 4. Why? Because it's only if you go through schools and if you start early enough that this can actually become, I would say, a way of living. So we strongly believe in volunteering. We strongly believe in the act of giving, giving back to society, giving back to those in need, etc. Yes, you'll definitely find a firm supporter there.
That's wonderful. Here, in that vein, you would know that one of THI's esteemed charitable partners is Desmos, a favourite charity of ours. A charity well known to you, Minister, as one of its co-founders. Tell us the story of your involvement with Desmos.
I'm not sure you want to hear that. It's a very long story. But in a nutshell, I would say this. Back in 2012, I'd been abroad for a number of years studying and working. And when I was back in Athens, together with 4 young professionals, 4 women, very dynamic, we realized around us that there were many people who were in need, either individually or through organizations. And at the same time, there were many who wanted to give. So we realized there was a need for, let's say, somebody in the middle who would actually put together those in need with those wanting to offer. So making the link between the two, making the matching process between the two. That's how Desmos was created back in 2012. So that's roughly 12 years ago. Look, I'm not objective because, as Mr. Pappas just said, I was involved from the very beginning. But it's part of the process. It has to do how in our daily lives we can actually incorporate giving. I remember when we first started this project, I was a lawyer at the time. And every single morning from 8 to 10 or to 11, I used to go to companies and pitch for donations for those in need. So this was part of our daily routine. And I think it's really important for members of society to contribute in any way each one of us can, obviously, through services, through other means, etc. But it's something we very strongly believe in. And I do know that THI is one of the most valuable partners of Desmos, and that you have worked together a number of projects, if I'm not mistaken, on the youth project as well. Obviously, Desmos is extremely grateful for the fantastic partnership that they have with THI.
And we are grateful for the great work they do in Greece, and we look forward to a long relationship with them. Minister, you already mentioned the reforms and removing the restrictions to the diaspora vote. Just last week, you announced some extensions to those reforms that involve the postal vote, particularly in the context of the European elections next year. How important was that as a reform for Greece itself? But beyond the importance for the diaspora, but for Greece itself, how important were those reforms?
First of all, I have a confession to make. As you know, this meeting was scheduled to take place last Monday, if I'm not mistaken. Given that I was aware, obviously, of the announcement of the Prime Minister, which was to take place on Thursday, I decided we definitely have to do this after the announcement, because the discussion will be totally different once the Prime Minister will have announced that for the first time in Greece's history, we will have a postal vote. So the confession is the reason why I asked for the meeting to be postponed was not my schedule, was the fact that I wanted us to have this meeting after the announcement, this great announcement by the Prime Minister. So as you may have heard, this past Thursday, the Prime Minister announced that for the first time in Greece's history, we will have a postal vote. Now, as mentioned previously, 3 months ago in July of 2023, we lifted all legal barriers regarding Greeks living abroad who want to vote. I will remind you that during the past elections, In order to vote, you had to prove you had lived in Greece for a certain period of time, you had filed a tax declaration, etc. We thought it was extremely important to lift all such barriers. And that's what we did. And that's the vote I referred to at the beginning of this session, where we managed to achieve a supermajority of 208 MPs votes out of 300. But truth be told, there were some practical impediments. We had lifted legal barriers, but at the same time, as you know, I'm sure yourselves, during the past elections, if you wanted to vote, you had to travel, for instance, from Perth to Melbourne. So that was a huge impediment in practice. Demanded money, demanded a commitment, a time commitment. And that's why we have been striving to lift all practical burdens as well. And indeed, on Thursday, the Prime Minister announced that for the first time in Greece's history, we will have a postal vote starting with the forthcoming European elections, which are to take place in June of 2024. So this in practice means that for the first time, there will be no impediments whatsoever, legal or practical, to you casting your vote from abroad, from where you live, from Australia, for the next European elections. We're talking about, a huge change in our democracy, a huge change as far as the casting of votes is concerned. We want to make this process as quick and simple as possible for each one of you, in line, of course, always with international best practices.
That is wonderful to hear. In your letter, if I remember rightly, to the diaspora in July, where you announced the first raft of reforms and the removal of those restrictions, you described it as fulfilling a historical national obligation for Greece. Why was it an issue of such importance to Greece that the diaspora vote be captured?
Look, I think by allowing Greeks living abroad to participate in our democracy with no barriers whatsoever, and to express their views on national matters, not only do we enhance our democracy, but we also, I would say, strengthen the ties that link us all together with respect to our shared country. And as a result, I would say that we're bolstering our nation's voice on the global stage. We want to see more Greek Australians, Greek Americans, Greeks living all around the world signing up to vote in the coming European elections. That makes Greece stronger every step of the way.
I think we agree with you wholeheartedly, Minister, and we're delighted by these amendments. Moving away from the vote, moving to structural reform in the public sector, it goes without saying, I think, that dealing with the Greek bureaucracy has presented its challenges, both to resident Greeks and Greeks abroad. I think one of your major policy platforms has been making a citizen's engagement with the bureaucracy easier, more efficient, more accountable, which is a major undertaking. How do you see your prospects of bringing real change to the Greek Dimosio, given its traditional resistance to change?
First of all, one of the first challenges I faced when I first took office here at the Ministry of the Interior was people are not fully aware of what the Ministry of the Interior does. So I keep getting this question when I'm, wandering around the streets, etc. When I meet with people, it's like, so what does this ministry do? The answer I give is that it's a ministry that has one, I would say, one major aim, which is how to make the life of citizens easier on all fronts. To give you an example, there's a platform that's been set up. It's called Mythos. If you go on mythos.gov.gr, you will see this platform. It has over 3,000 processes, from how do I get married, how do I get a license to get married, how do I get a license to open up a company, anything you can possibly imagine. So what we do is we input all information, but in a very user-friendly manner. So you have all the information required, how long does it take, what do I have to pay, what are the steps of the procedure, etc. Why do we do this? To make people's life easier. we want to make it as easy as possible for people to interact with the public sector. So this is an example of efforts and of efforts we're undertaking in order to render citizens' life easier.
And has there been resistance from the Greek public service, from the Demosio to that change?
Not in this respect, no. I would say that the public service is quite helpful. They believe in this project, and we're jointly trying to find ways to constantly improve it. I'll give you an example. So I mentioned Mythos. So Mythos, if you log on, and you can log on while we speak, you can see any types of processes. You can there's a search function, and you can actually look through. One addition we're planning to make in the next couple of months is, once you've logged on and you've been interested in X procedure, for instance, how do I get this building permit? You will be able to put in your cell phone number. And whenever there's a change in that process, you will receive a text, an SMS saying, you had logged on to look at the steps of this procedure. Now there's been a change, log on to see the change. So all this to make it easier for citizens to navigate through a challenging, I would say, public administration, challenging up to now. We're trying to make it as easy as possible.
Hand in hand with these reforms, you've also brought in as a new package of reforms, and I think it's still in progress, to transform the personnel of the public service more on a merits-based promotion system rather than what's existed in the past, and thereby delivering better outcomes for citizens. How long before you think we see better responsiveness from government agencies to the needs of Greek citizens and Greeks abroad with this merits-based system?
You're referring to a law that we passed a month ago, which has to do with the way we select and we evaluate top executives in public body, in public organizations. So we're talking about more than 600 positions. To give you an idea, we're talking about all the public hospitals of Greece. We're talking about other national organizations like the organizations for medicine or for tourism, etc. So this was voted in a month ago. Up until now, it was the absolute prerogative of the government to appoint whomever the government saw fit. Now this has changed in a way the government has chosen for it to change, in a way that we have increased minimum requirements for all positions. For instance, we require a university degree in relation to the position, working experience in relation to the position. For the first time in Greece's history, all candidates, for instance, for heads of hospitals will go through a skills test. And only the top 15 will go through the next phase. So we're talking about a process that's demanding and that aims at selecting the best, literally the best, for these most crucial positions. So this was voted in a month ago. We're in the phase of implementation. We're very close to having the first I would say, announcement regarding the positions of all heads of hospitals to be announced. We have been working with the Ministry of Health very closely in that direction. Now, I would say that in general, the merit-based system is something we very strongly believe in. And that, I would say, is coupled with other initiatives we're undertaking. I'll mention one. One has to do with, for the first time, allowing citizens to assess the value of public services they are receiving. So imagine you go to a public hospital in Greece. Once you're done with your visit there, you will receive a text which will ask you if your problem has been solved, which will ask you to give your feedback as to the service that was provided through the public hospital, etc. Why do we do this? For two reasons. First of all, so as to have citizens, so to hear their voice stronger. And the second reason is so as to increase the productivity of public services. So we're constantly trying to improve services for the benefit, obviously, of people. We're preparing a new system for the selection of all supervisors in the public sector. Again, a merit-based system. We are working on improvements regarding more targeted and faster hirings of civil servants. We are going to be using artificial intelligence for evaluating public sector needs. So, for instance, digitalization has had the benefit of saving some positions in the public sector, but at the same time, the climate crisis has generated new needs. So that's why we're using AI tools so as to help us navigate and better predict what the needs of the Greek state will be medium term and long term. We have target setting for civil servants, and we have financial bonuses for those who achieve the best results, so productivity bonuses within the public sector. So all of this has to do with increasing efficiency within the public sector and rendering better services to our citizens.
That's a very complete answer, Minister. I thank you for it. And I assume that transparency runs parallel with all these initiatives, being another critical component in any public service.
It's true, and that's why, for instance, we want this new mechanism of evaluating public servants to be public. That's why we're striving for all of for transparency through all aspects of public administration.
I must say, if anyone on this broadcast didn't know what the Ministry of the Interior does, I think they do know now just how broad a portfolio it is. And I must say, Minister, that since taking up your new portfolio, you've demonstrated an appetite for taking on the big issues. Another reform that you're delivering is in the NGO, in the not-for-profit sector. I think they're now called CSOs, if I have that correctly, the acronym, where you've introduced a new framework for within which charities must operate in Greece. At THI Australia and across the THI family, our supporters take great comfort in the fact that we vet our charities in Greece very carefully. But it is comforting to know that there's going to be a system now within Greece that will elevate Greece to what much of the Western world now has in the not-for-profit sector. How important was that as a step within the Greek not-for-profit sector to introduce those reforms?
So Nick, actually the system is in place. If you log onto OKIP, OKOIP.gov.gr, you will see the platform through which NGOs are registered now. In order to be registered with the Greek public system, you need to submit a number of documents regarding transparency, financial statements, statutes, etc. So all information regarding the NGO. So this was done for two main reasons. The one is because somebody may ask, okay, and why should I log on? Why should I go through this process? The answer is twofold. If you do go through this process and if you're vetted, then you get tax incentives, tax brackets. For instance, you're not taxed VAT on services that the NGO is providing, or you won't pay property tax on properties that the NGO owns. So the one aspect is that you get the most important tax incentives. The other aspect is that once you do submit such information and you are vetted, then you get access to public funding, potentially access to public funding. And here's one more catch. The more information you provide, the more transparent you are, the more tax benefits you get, and you also are eligible for greater public funding. So this is a platform that incentivizes basically NGO to become fully transparent. And this is, of course, very useful for the Greek state, but it's also very useful for organizations like THI who want to find valuable partners within Greece, NGOs to partner with. And I think it's really important, and it will be really important for those organizations like yourself to know that they have gone through the vetting process of the Greek state.
Certainly, I must say we've been very fortunate. The charities we've engaged with have been wonderful and have delivered on everything we've asked of them. But it's excellent to hear that there's now a rigorous framework in place that gives that transparency and also incentivizes at the same time. aside from the matters we've touched on, Minister, your other current priorities as Minister of the Interior?
Look, we have already passed 3 laws, and we're on to the 4th law during these first 5 months of this term. I outlined a number of issues regarding how we aim at putting the right person in the right position, how we intend to increase meritocracy, how we intend to involve citizens more. Another aspect is how we intend to accelerate disciplinary justice for civil servants, how we intend to put in place a new civil service code, how we intend to digitalize the whole process of citizenship. There's a lot of work to be done there, and also how we will improve coordination between the different levels of government. I'll give you an example. You may wake up one morning and you have a tree that's fallen on your window. You don't know who to call. Should you call the mayor? Should you call the municipality? Should you call the decentralized body? Should you call the minister? So we're trying to untangle this whole, I would say, everything having to do with the various levels of government, and who is competent for what. So this is just in a nutshell, some of the priorities for this term.
I think one of those in particular that you've just mentioned that will be music to the ears of our listeners will be the digitisation of the citizenship process, right, which is something that is fraught with complications, particularly when you're doing it from abroad. So that is very encouraging to hear, and we look forward to learning more about it. Minister, you've already touched on the fact that you served as Minister for Education in the government's previous term. What do you see? And you mentioned one of the highlights of that period. What do you see as the other highlights of your tenure as Minister for Education? And frankly, what remains to be done in the education sector?
Look, I had the privilege of serving for a full term at the Ministry of Education for 4 years, and it was quite challenging 4 years, yet fantastic 4 years, I would say, despite the challenges. So we brought changes starting from preschool. So during our term, preschool was extended to the kids starting at the age of 4. It used to be at the age of 5. Now every single 4-year-old goes to preschool. It is mandatory for preschool to start at the age of 4. We have English as of the age of 4 in all public preschools of Greece. We have skills being introduced, skills curriculum being introduced into the mandatory school program, starting at the age of 4 until the age of 15. Greece hadn't hired for over 12 years permanent teachers. We hired more than 28,000 permanent teachers during these past 3 years. We extended all-day schooling, so parents have the option in public schools to leave their kids until 5:30, which is really important, especially coupled with working parents and the need to, I would say, support families in Greece and to help also with the demographic challenge that Greece is facing. We introduced multiple textbooks, a reform regarding multiple textbooks per class. Teacher trainings on digital skills, new teaching methods, over 150,000 teacher trainings. We expanded what we call model schools. We reinstated rather model schools and exemplary schools. So these are schools, public schools you enter upon with exams, model schools. They had been abolished by the previous government. We very strongly believe in these schools. They're excellent public schools, really difficult to get in. Once you're in, you have an extraordinary level of academic achievement. We reinstated those schools and expanded them throughout the country. At the same time, we have what we call experimental schools now, which are public schools where we test new educational methods, new reforms, etc., in order for them to then be dispersed to the entire education system of Greece. We implemented a national question bank for end-of-year high schools exams. We brought the entrance requirement, grade entrance requirement for entrance into university which aimed at upping the level overall of the effort undertaken. As you know, we were under COVID for a number of years as the entire planet. So we moved to a digital system, which allowed for a much faster digital transformation of education, with increase of digital equipment in schools, with interactive boards, etc. Assessment and evaluation at three levels: at the schools level, at the teachers level, and at the educational systems level. So evaluation methods and assessment methods at all levels. Inclusion. Yesterday we had the International Day for people with disabilities. We have been implementing a strategic plan for equal access to education for persons with disabilities. We introduced over 3,000 psychologists and social workers in schools. We revamped the entire VET system, vocational educational system, so as to cover needs that society actually has. I'll give you an example. We're talking about green technology. We're talking about the climate crisis. We need technicians for renewable energies, for instance, and we don't have enough. So there's an example of how we try to emphasize needs that society and the economy actually has, and try to offer them through vocational educational and training. Many changes as far as the higher education system is concerned. We had 30 top US universities come to Greece a year ago to form joint degrees, double degrees, foreign language programs. So Greece is opening up to the world a lot more as far as the higher education system is concerned. Increasing student housing, financial support, increasing dorm facilities, mobility programs within universities. So what we call the Greek Erasmus program. You may have entered into law school, but you may have a hidden passion for something else, for IT, for instance. You're in a position, based on the law was voted in a year ago, to go for 6 months and test something different and see in case that pleases you more, if you like it more. So mobility within the higher education system. Now, moving forward, my successor, who's great, Kyriakos Pyrakakis, is working very hard with his entire team to implement all of these reforms, and to also take it a step further as far as private higher education is concerned. Greece is unfortunately one of the last, if not the last, country in the world that does not allow for private universities to be put in place. So Kyriakos Pyrakakis is doing a fantastic job in actually working on allowing the setup of such private institutions, which will aim, I would say, at fostering competition in a good way. Competition with public universities, and at the end of the day, offering even better education services to all. I could stay here for hours and talk to you about education. It's a field that I really love, and I think has tremendous potential to offer to our citizens. When you think of Greece in 2030, 2040, 2050, you have to look at education, because the way we educate our youth today is going to form what our country is going to look like in 10, 20, 30 years from now.
And I think Greece has a future in the provision of services. It could be one of its economic mainstays. So we're very heartened by what's been obviously a very productive 4 years in that ministry. And Mr. Kyriakakis has his hands full in implementing so many reforms. So we look forward to seeing those roll out over this term. You did mention the universities, Minister. I wasn't going to ask the question, but given that you've mentioned a hot topic in the diaspora, particularly in Australia at the moment, is the maintenance of the Greek language. The universities are slowly steering away from preserving the modern Greek language within their campuses, and that's causing great concern amongst diaspora Greeks in Australia in particular. What more can we do to maintain the Greek language amongst our homogenes?
Look, there are many ways to maintain and to enhance, I would say, the teaching of the Greek language. One has to do with schools and the other has to do with universities. As far as schools are concerned, I know that the Ministry of Education is working very hard in terms of both securing the necessary personnel. It's not always easy, I must tell you, and it's not always easy to find teachers who are willing to travel and to live abroad, given also the high living expenses. So through schools, through, I would say, teaching personnel, through materials that Greece sends to Greek schools abroad, but also through universities. And there, a significant effort is undertaken so as to form partnerships with universities abroad in Australia and the US, regarding also the teaching of Greek language, regarding Greek chairs, etc. So it's something I know that my colleague Kyriakos Pierakakis is very keen on in maintaining and enhancing the teaching of the Greek language.
It is a pressing issue, Minister, and we do look forward to progress in that regard. It would be remiss of me not to ask you to comment on the serious state of the world at present. It's beyond your portfolio, obviously, but I think as citizens, we're all concerned, particularly how Greece is currently positioned from a geopolitical point of view, given its proximity to the tragic events in the Middle East and against the backdrop of its always delicate relationship with Turkey. How do you see Greece currently positioned?
Look, we, from the very first moment, we have expressed our most deep concern regarding the situation in Gaza and the unfolding humanitarian crisis. From the very beginning, the Prime Minister has expressed the support of Greece to Israelis' right to self-defense after the brutal attack on its territory. That being said, he has emphasized, and Greece has emphasized through our Minister of Foreign Affairs as well, that this right must be exercised in accordance with international law. And of course, above all, international humanitarian law. So we are very closely following the developments. We are participating in humanitarian aid. The Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs has sent aid and is constantly assisting in all possible ways. Now, as far as the current situation in the Greek-Turkish relations, I would say we're in a positive momentum. We have the Turkish president, Mr. Erdogan, coming to Greece the day after tomorrow on the 7th, so in 3 days, on the 7th. He is traveling to Greece together with an important number of his cabinet. I think that during the past several months, we have seen an important shift. We have to be cautious, of course, because, one step at a time. But, I think it's important that both countries have strong governments, recently renewed mandates. Both Mr. Erdogan and Mr. Mitsotakis have recently renewed mandates, and they both have expressed a will to improve bilateral relations. So I would say that political channels of communication have been further enhanced during the last few months. We are very much open to discussion, and that's why we're having this meeting in December. But at the same time, we're adamant about the strict abidance by international law.
I think you've observed, at least from afar, the good work that THI does across the globe. But more generally, how effective do you think the Hellenic diaspora has been in supporting Greece, particularly over the last decade, Minister, as Greece has emerged from the crisis? Do you think we can better coordinate our efforts as an international diaspora? And do you think the government and the non-government sectors can do more to assist the diaspora to do that?
Look, I think your role is crucial, and we are grateful for all that you do. You are ambassadors of a country abroad, and that's why we're so adamant also about lifting all barriers whatsoever for Greece's voice to be heard as strong as possible across the globe. It's obviously upon all of us in the government to reach out to you, to reach out to the diaspora, to listen to your views, to your concerns, your expertise. And I think that technology is very helpful in this matter. Look at what we're doing today. We're in a position to talk, to discuss about so many issues. And I think that's something that we should undertake even on a frequent basis, I would say, so as to give you also more information and more tools to act as even more efficient ambassadors out there in favor of our country.
We'll take that as a promise, Minister, that we'll be engaging with you regularly. We look forward to that. We certainly do. A recent issue that arose only a matter of days ago was the unfortunate cancellation of the British Prime Minister's meeting with Kyriakos Mitsotakis, which surprised many of us, I must say. How do you see the prospects for Greece's claim for the return of the Parthenon marbles, given this surprising reaction from PM Sunak?
Look, I think that the cancellation by the British PM, Rishi Sunak, of the scheduled meeting between him and the Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis was definitely an unfortunate event. That being said, Greek-British relations have a very important historical weight and obviously will not in any way be affected by this. I would dare to say that this whole unfortunate event had a positive twist. And that's that Greece's just demand for the reunification, because that's what we're talking about. The reunification of the Parthenon sculptures has gained even more publicity, tremendous publicity. And we're not talking just about the United Kingdom, we're talking about the entire planet. So out of an unfortunate event, there is, which we do not want, obviously, to give any further discuss it in any way. But I think that through this unfortunate event, there has been an opportunity for the planet as a whole to be informed of Greece's just demand regarding the reunification of the Parthenon marbles.
Are you able to give us any hints as to any scoops that might be happening in terms of any announcements, any possible compromises with the British on the reunification of the marbles? Is anything in the wind?
Look, nothing that I could publicly disclose right now, but I can tell you this: the Minister of Culture, Lina Mendoni, who's doing a fantastic job, has really done a tremendous job over the past 4 years in advancing our demand, our just demand, in portraying arguments. We are in discussions, and therefore let us leave her undertake this great job, and we are here to support her in every way.
That's a very skillful lawyer's answer, if I've ever heard one, Minister. Thank you for that.
That's why the legal profession is useful.
I agree. A number of viewers, as a final question, Minister, because we're approaching the end of time, but just a number of viewers have asked whether you've ever visited Australia, and if not, when we might expect to see you on our shores. Is a ministerial visit on the horizon?
First of all, I've visited Australia twice in my life. The most recent time was during my honeymoon. This was, we had 12 years ago. But definitely now, with these recent changes that we've been discussing, that were just announced, both the alternate minister, Theodoris Livanis, and myself, we are looking at conveying the message and getting in touch with Greeks abroad, so in Australia as well. We'll definitely be in closer touch during the next few months, but I would like to ask you as well to act as much as possible in order to convey the message of this most important change. The law is expected to be voted in January of next year, in January of 2024, so 5 months ahead of the next European elections. We depend on you. We depend on you to get the message across for every single Greek living in Australia to become aware of this most important change, he or she will be able to vote through postal vote during the next European elections. And we want Greece's voice from Australia to be heard loud and clear during the next European elections.
I think it's a great note to finish on. A fully enfranchised diaspora is something I think we can all look forward to, and we can all play our part in Greece's renewal, which is what, at the end of the day, we all want to see. So, Minister, it's been a delight to have you on our webinar. I know our viewers would have greatly enjoyed hearing from you on such a diverse range of topics. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of all of them. And we certainly look forward to seeing you in Australia in the not too distant future. So our thanks again.
I want to thank you for everything you do for our country. I want to thank you for your fantastic work. And I want to thank you for the initiative for this discussion, which I think is, at least in my mind, it's a true pleasure to have the privilege of talking with you. And rest assured, our contacts are going to be even more frequent moving forward. And again, we depend on you to get the message across about this most recent announcement of the Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, regarding, for the first time in Greece's history, the possibility for Greeks abroad to vote through a postal vote.
The message has been received loud and clear, Minister. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Viewers, I trust you enjoyed this wonderful opportunity to hear from one of Greece's rising stars on the political scene. And like me, you were impressed with the Minister's candour and her grasp of a very diverse range of topics. And once again, I thank the Minister for joining us today. This concludes our 6th In Conversation webinar. Please stay tuned to our social media platforms for news about our next webinar early in the new year. And please remember to support THI Australia. You'll shortly see a holding card that gives you some details about how you can make a tax-deductible donation to what we do in Greece, or by sponsoring one of our philanthropic activities within Greece that has a fantastic outcome for the destitute in Greece. So thank you again for joining us. Good night, good morning, and good afternoon, wherever you may be.